Cook, Victoria, girls who've left civilian life for a career with opportunity graduate as fully trained members of the Women's Royal Australian Air Force. There are 30 different kinds of jobs available.
My first job as an airwoman when I was posted to East Sale was as a clerk general, which in civilian life is a secretary.
Now, a clerk A, that meant I was only a typist. I can't think what the other was, if you knew shorthand, which I didn't. So I was a clerk A.
The office routine in most Royal Australian Air Force establishments is carried out by airwomen. They become experts in office management and permit manpower to be effectively employed elsewhere. The Royal Australian Air Force's accounting system is also handled efficiently by WRAAF accounting machine operators and equipment accounts clerks. They carry out their duties in all the occupations associated with a well-conducted office. Some airwomen elect to become dental assistants after the completion of their 5 weeks basic training course at Point Cook. A vital role of airwomen is that of safety equipment worker. This work covers the whole field of the safety equipment carried in modern RAAF aircraft. Many WRAAF members are employed as RAAF mechanical transport drivers. In this capacity, they service vehicles and may be called upon to drive staff cars or light trucks. Airwomen are trained as telephone operators and may be posted to units located in every state of the Commonwealth. The Royal Australian Air Force has mapped a great part of our continent using stereo photo mosaics. Here, airwomen trained as cartographers assist in the preparation of Air Force maps by this process.
Well, I was a telephonist and I worked in signals section, and that was on the base squadron at Point Cook. And the switchboard was downstairs, and the signals section with the flight lieutenant in charge, Merish, Squadron Leader Merish I think he was, and there are a couple of girls who worked in signals section, but we were downstairs with the telephones and plugs and cords back in those days, you know. The poky little room, and behind us, you walk in the door and there was the switchboard, and then behind that there were all the setup for the exchange, so there were a whole lot of panels and all sorts of things.
I worked in the office, mostly typing and filing, but because sometimes I didn't have enough work to do, I was seconded to the library and did a lot of librarian work. And I also got a couple of secondments to School of Languages. They wanted me to stay over there, but I preferred Staff College.
Education assistants learn to handle training and teaching aids, such as projection machinery. And they also function as librarians to catalogue and issue the thousands of books which fill RAAF libraries. This is the RAAF College Library, which plays an important part in the training of the RAAF's future executive officers.
It was in 1960 I became an officer, so that would have been, I was 28. Well, the structure, there was the wing officer who was she was the director of the Women's Royal Australian Air Force. There were 2 squadron officers, and I'm not sure just how many flight officers and section officers, but there were only 22 officers, and I'm not sure how many airwomen there were. But you'd be on a base in charge of different numbers of girls. I think I probably had about 30 at Fairburn. I probably had about the same number at Headquarters Support Command. And you were in charge of their general well-being and the efficiency of the corps. That was it.
Well, you work Monday to Friday, unless you were a shift worker, which my friend was. She was a switch girl, telephone operator. They all worked shifts, but the rest of us only worked Monday to Friday.
There was parade every morning, and everybody else who started work, they had to go on parade and whatever, but we didn't do that because we started before the parade, and we didn't have lunch breaks and stuff like everybody else did, because we took turns in doing that, because someone had to be on the switch, and then we'd come on at night time and you'd be on the switch all night, and there was a folding up bed there that you could put beside the switchboard, and you made the bed up and you could go to bed, and they'd bring you your tea at night time, and you had no choice of what you got. Come around and give you your meal. And the orderly officer used to call in sometimes to say hello, how were things going and whatever.
Orderly WRAAFs, you always had one, but that altered for the other barracks, that they had to check on the girls at night. I was strictly orderly WRAAF for the recruits. One, strangely enough, was a girl I went to school with. She got a fly in her ear one night and screamed. And of course I went racing over from my barracks, because I'd heard her, to find that a medical orderly from across the road was already there. And he rinsed her ear out and got rid of the fly, and I got hauled over the coals the next morning for having a man in the barracks without permission. But anyway, we got through that. And the other was one of the girls dropped an iron and caught it. She learnt that lesson, you don't do that. But no, they were all pretty good kids, and I mean they were away from home for the first time, and being under disciplinarian drill officers, they were pretty well behaved.
Well, you could be paraded if you had been out late after hours, if you went back on time on base, if you were misconduct, if it was something that there was the commanders at different had the opportunity to charge a person if they felt they'd been doing the wrong thing, and so they would then be brought up to you. That was when your law teachings came into, and they could be brought before you and for punishment. But I don't think I had many girls that I had brought up to me for punishment.
And it used to be really funny because, the meals had come in. We used to do all sorts of funny little bits for ourselves, but we used to turn over the radiator on its side, and a couple of the girls would go round to the airfield at the weekends when no one was flying, of course, and pick mushrooms. And they'd bring the mushrooms in, and we'd chop the mushrooms up and we'd sit them over the radiator and cook ourselves mushrooms. It was pretty good.
So there were three normally in the office, flight sergeant who was in charge, and the two girls working there. But the people who were the students, they were officers, a couple of civilians, and we always had an American officer on course, but they had to treat us very nicely, because in those days you had the old typewriters, you had to put new ribbons in, and they couldn't just come and order us. They had to treat us like human beings and request that we would do things. But the atmosphere was pretty good. Yeah.
My job in the cinema wasn't very much, except that I had to sign over because of the cash. They had to have an officer, and the only person in the cinema was the cinema operator, and I had to sign off on his cash details. And he didn't like it when I was posted to Canberra, the fact that he had a female officer who was a cinema officer. So he reported me and went to the OC and complained. And the OC just said to him, "I'm sorry, but that's who your officer is, and you've just got to learn to accept it." And he did, and we became good friends after that. We never had any more further problems.
And I also got seconded one night to do the cadets pass out doing the drinks. I had no idea what drinks were served in what glasses. I was serving brandy in sherry glasses and wondering why they kept coming back for more. I said I'd never do it again.
Of course, there was nowhere, if you didn't have a car, there was nowhere that you could say good night, snuggle up to somebody, forget it, because there wasn't anywhere. And there was a phone box out there outside the WRAAFery, and often you'd be woken at you know, you might have been dozing off at night when you were on duty on the switchboard, and you'd go to answer it, and all you'd get was murmurings and, you know, a bit of deep breathing, etc. It was in the telephone box. So we used to laugh about that. We used to get all sorts of phone calls. You'd get phone calls from the cadets who wanted somebody to talk to, and I went out with 2 of them. That we weren't allowed to do that.
Try to guide them, to maybe try and get one of the other airwomen to mentor them. And if they were forming the wrong associations, which could happen in the services, then we would usually ask for them to be posted to another area where they would be away from that bad influence. And if you thought the girls were being a bad influence on others, you try to, you know, counsel them also. It was a very, very caring job. You had to be very careful of what you did, but you also had to be caring for the rest of the girls. But mostly, there was not much trouble with them, really. They were quite good. Most of them responsible.
No, it was very good. The girls were very friendly and very supportive. There would be 2 of us working together during the day. We were good friends, and we didn't have anybody there. I don't think at any time that I ever worked I had anybody there that was, you know, a pain in the neck or anything. I mean, I might have been a pain in the neck. I had to laugh. They gave me a little thermometer one time to hang on the wall, and they wrote on the back of it, and it was to remind me of my likeness to Melbourne weather. So I think I must have been one of those. My moods used to go up and down. I'd be pretty, you know, unhappy and writing poems. And
when I came back to Headquarters Support Command, because that was the main entry in Melbourne, like it was in Sydney where I joined, they had a female who was interviewing the girls. And that was very interesting because you had to judge whether you thought the girls would be suitable for the service, and some weren't, and you had to reject them, which was a very difficult thing to do. But mostly they were accepted. They were just young girls trying for a new job, or trying for their first job.